is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
This webinar will begin shortly. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. Today we are joined by Elisabeth Hocke. She has her webinar on I Am Groot, Learning Agile Testing. We have two webinars up on our site for July, Automation versus Intelligence, Come With Me If You Want to Live, and Becoming a Coding Tester. I will link those two webinars in the chat box if you want. We also have a webinar presented to us by Rickard, who is the program chair for this year's conference in The Hague. Everyone can join this webinar. It isn't just about the program in November, it's how a program can be put together and emerging topics and trends. So it should be a very interesting webinar. If you want to ask Lisi questions at any time during this webinar, please do so, and you can do so on the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen, and I will get to a Q&A at the very end of the presentation. So without further ado, I will give Lisi the control of the screen. Perfect.
So hello everybody, welcome to this webinar. My name is Lisi. I'm an Agile tester and I am Groot. So Groot, well, I assume several of you already know Groot, but probably there are also some who don't know that fictional character. Some of you might have seen the Guardians of the Galaxy or read the comic books. But who of you know that Groot is actually a Dutch word? Of course, pronounced differently. And, well, who of you know what it means? So, actually, it means big, large. But you could also say great. I mean, using our poetic license here, right? So, why would I then be Groot? Why would I be great? Why would I stretch myself and make me larger or greater? Why would I do something today that scares me, like giving this webinar? So I'd like to tell you my personal story of continuous learning Agile testing. The lessons I'd like to share with you, they helped me on my journey so far. You can try them for yourself, see for yourself if what helps in your context. But me personally, I would love to have heard them, 9 years ago when I stumbled into testing. Just a heads up, the ideas and concepts I'm about to share are not my own. I picked them up at several places, but they inspired me a lot, and they proved also to be correct in my experience. So today, I'd like to share those with you, and I hope some of you might also find some benefit in them. So, Groot is actually a tree-like being. It's a fictional character. And trees have annual rings, right? They get more as they grow. I'd like to use this image as a metaphor for our learning. Let's call them learning rings. And yeah, let's start with this little dot in the middle, representing ourselves. So, let's make it smile. How do we grow as a person? And if we take that further, how do we learn as a team? And what about the organization, the company we're working in? We also have to learn on that level. And then what about the testing community outside of the company? And last but not least, I'd like to talk about what helped me to grow. So let's get it started. First of all, how to grow as a person. Now, my very basic lesson here is to develop a growth mindset. The thing is, me personally, I'm coming from a rather fixed mindset, which means people are either smart or they're not. Intelligence is fixed by genes. You can hear that in expressions like, I am smart, or I am dumb, or I can't do this. You have to be intelligent to be successful. I started out from that, and after university, I rather stumbled into testing. I actually never knew I could work in software development before. I worked then, or I happened to work in a very little startup. We were developing an AI middleware for game developers, and I happened to be the only tester there. The previous one had quit his job. So I had no mentor, nobody to learn from, or, to ask those questions what testing is about. I had to learn by doing and find it out on my own. So what I had to do here is exactly to develop a growth mindset, which means I can get smarter. Or an expression like, this looks hard, but I can figure it out. Capability and intelligence can be grown through effort, through struggle and failure. What I'd like to invite you to is to think about whether you can relate with that. Maybe you have made a similar experience already or not, and if not, then think about it. And also for the upcoming lessons. Let's get to the second one, which is don't let fear hold you back. Fear has many faces and aspects. Today, I'd like to concentrate on the following. The fear of failure. I mean, who likes to fail, right? I don't like to fail, really not. But I had to learn that failure is part of learning, or at least from failure, you can learn a lot. And if I feared that failure, I feared the learning that could get out of it. For example, I really hated to ask dumb questions. Things that I thought, okay, everybody knows already, and that makes me look silly. Same with saying I don't know. The older I get and the more senior, the more I learned that this is totally fine to say and even more professional to say I don't know. I mean, it's like that. But you don't have to stop there. You can say, I don't know, but I'd like to learn. Or I don't know yet. There's an acronym I really like, and it's actually FAIL, F-A-I-L. First attempt in learning. That pretty much brings it to the point. And I also have a favorite quote here from Samuel Beckett, an Irish novelist. And he said, ever tried, ever failed? No matter. Try again. fail again, fail better. So allow yourself to fail so you can learn from it. The other aspect here of fear is the fear of success. It's quite the opposite. And it sounds counterintuitive in the beginning, maybe a bit strange. But if you've ever been on a sports team and you're in the middle of a match and you suddenly realize, hey, we could win this. Oh, we could win this. Oh, really? And suddenly you're losing without much fight, then you know what I mean. So it's important to allow yourself to fail, but also to allow yourself to succeed. Inspiration can be found everywhere, at expected and unexpected places. So kind of expected might be books, right? In my very first job as a tester at this little startup, we didn't have any training budget or budget to go to conferences. But our product owner back then brought us some books from the My Cone series. And guess what? Among them, there was a book called Agile Testing by Lisa Crispin and Jenny Gregory. I hope you've heard of that book before. If not, really check it out. It provided me a wealth of inspiration and also concrete things I could try out in my own setting. Like, for example, sharing the pain of regression testing with the whole team. Because you know what happens if you ask a developer to do the same thing twice? Yeah, they will automate it. And that was the beginning of test automation back then in our team, doing it together. But for inspiration, there are also unexpected places. This little startup I'm telling you about, well, you know, it didn't make it. And it was already dying when we tried, a last marketing campaign. And we started researching about social media because, everybody was on social media back then, every company. And we came across Twitter as well. And personally, I never thought I would be on Twitter or that this service would be any use to me. But exactly then, it surprised me that I discovered Twitter for myself. I discovered that many experts in the testing area can be found there, like the authors of the book I just read, Lisa Crispin, Jenny Gregory. So I followed them, and I tried to express my own thoughts, start sharing bits and pieces here, but I really had a hard time with that. Still, I suddenly got followed by Lisa, followed back. And I was like, wow, really? Did that just happen? And we started a conversation. And exactly this point was the beginning of my journey with the testing community. The next lesson is, in my personal view, job titles are just words. They might be nice for your CV to get a new job, as employers expect certain titles. I totally understand that. But in my experience, as soon as I had the job, well, the titles were just words. After this startup failed, I had to change jobs, of course. And suddenly my contract said that I'm an IT consultant. And I didn't relate to that title, IT consultant. So a few months in the job, I decided to take a leap and try something that scared me back then. I changed my email signature from IT consultant to Agile tester and Scrum Master because, well, I happen to be the Scrum Master as well on the team. And also changed the way how I talk about my own job. All the time I thought like, okay, somebody's gonna find out, like somebody's gonna complain. But to my surprise, nobody ever complained. Instead, they saw me with different eyes and it actually benefited everybody. The same experience I had with roles. Roles are also just words. And I really identify strongly as a tester. But this role doesn't limit how I can contribute. I try to do what's needed and fill the gap. And to do so, I can apply and share whatever experience I can bring with me. Be it, for example, from working as a Scrum Master back then, or from my knowledge of how teams work, because I've been a long time on a volleyball team now. So define your own title, your own role, identity. Contribute wherever you can, not only what fits to your title or your assigned responsibility. Right now, I'd rather step out of this, permission zone. I'd rather just do it, and potentially I might have to ask for forgiveness afterwards. Coming to the next lesson, which is that my own behavior can trigger change. Others might join in or not, but by leading the way, I can become a role model and induce something what I like to call behavior-driven change. It's me who decides the desired behavior. For example, if I say I would love to pair up with my developers, but then I always shut myself off and focus on solo work, then change won't happen. I have to get up myself. Or if I say, everybody can come to me anytime, ask me anything, but then I get annoyed if they do, they won't do it for long. Also, sometimes it's only me who can change my own situation. I had a period where I was working in a rather traditional environment, and I tried to trigger some agile thoughts and some improvements, closer collaboration, but mostly I ran against walls. So I didn't achieve much with my endeavor to trigger change. In the end, I knew I had to get out of this and find a new place for me. Because sometimes that's the only thing left to do, to leave. Mix up your learning. I really like to mix my topics I learn about, and not all topics have to be obviously testing related. I try to broaden my horizon as well and learn about other topics that help my work, like learning about Agile because I'm working in Agile environments, for example, to facilitate retrospectives, or learn about how our brain works. There's a really great book by Daniel Kahneman. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's awesome. If you haven't read it yet, it's really a recommendation. I learned a lot about my own biases, which is of course perfect if you have to test. Or learn about product development, some methods to, refine the roadmap, for example, like impact mapping or story mapping. Anything helps. Also at conferences, I like to join sessions about things I don't know yet. For example, I learned about how to test Internet of Things like that. Or learn about VR, AR, MR. What I really like also is to mix my styles of learning. Of course, I learn by consuming to, acquire knowledge, reading books, reading blog posts, or check my Twitter stream, watching videos, going to conferences, all good. But at some point, I also have to apply that knowledge and learn by doing. Because I learned for myself, I have to fail and get feedback to really learn. So I try to learn on the job and try things I heard, for example, at a conference, start small. But still, this is so far not enough anymore. I try also to learn by sharing the knowledge I already gathered. Because when I have to formulate my own thoughts, I quickly realize what I understood and what not. There are many ways to do that. I can coach my team at work. I can mentor other testers. I can tweet about my thoughts. I can blog internally, externally. Maybe write a paper and submit it to a conference. Or, giving conference talks and workshops. Or, doing a webinar like this one. I'm doing this to share my lessons, but also to help my own learning. Constantly reinvent yourself. And with constantly, I mean never stop. We have to continue learning. Testing is a lot about learning it in itself. What helped me was to create a habit. I had an extrinsic motivation at first to learn more because a few years back I started to learn for certificates to pimp up my CV. Yeah. So I knew I had to read a lot of books and get into the topics. And I thought, okay, how to cope with all that information, how to get it all in. So I decided to start a habit and to learn something every single day. No matter how much time I invested, it could be just, reading a blog post or checking my Twitter stream, reading a paragraph in a book, could be anything, but every day. And by doing so, I got inspired. This extrinsic motivation became intrinsic. So I also could reinvent myself. And this part is, what is important here is that you can always start to learn something new, no matter at which point or in your life you are, or what others already know. For me, this was about programming. I'm not coming from a technical education background. I always thought everybody already learned programming as a child or as a teenager. They are way ahead of me. I will never be as good as them, and so on and so on. And that held me back. But when I realized I can just do it for myself, and because it's fun, I like to learn about that. I realized that, okay, maybe I don't have to be as good as, my programmer colleagues right now. But any single bit I know or piece of knowledge I have will help me understand more and help me with testing. So give new thoughts and experiments a try, because it's easy to fall back to old habits or, hide behind those fears. At the end of this webinar, I'll share a link to recommended resources with you, which help me to stay up to date and constantly reinvent myself. So, we talked a lot about personal development, but how to learn as a team now? My basic lesson here is to engage the whole team. You might have heard of the term whole team approach, which is often named by Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory. And this was my biggest lesson when working with my teams. That quality and testing are shared responsibilities. The whole team is responsible for the end product. And here again, don't let fear hold you back. For example, the fear of losing this unique reason that you are on the team, why you get paid. In my opinion, our job is to enable the whole team to deliver a quality product, a valuable product. To do so, of course, we have to get the buy-in of the whole team. Sometimes this does not work as well as we would like to have it. So I had sometimes to pick some people with whom it worked to find allies. And then if this works in a small setting and you make it transparent, others might join in as well. It might trigger them. You can start a movement. What my current team tries to do a lot, with a lot of success as well, is to increase the lottery factor. Imagine one of your teammates suddenly wins the lottery and, quits working. So can the show go on? What's the minimum number of team members so that the show can go on? What we try to do is to really be full stack developers. Well, of course, nobody's ever really full stack, but what we mean here is that we try to share our expertises. The developers on our team always pull the highest priority items, And it doesn't matter if these stories are backend related or front end or both or build pipeline, infrastructure, research, anything. And it's the same with testing. For this, of course, I have to share my knowledge with the team. And testing might not become their expertise, but they're able to help out and resolve bottlenecks. It also fosters the team spirit a lot. And it's quite easy and stress-free to go on vacation like that, or speak at a conference, or doing this webinar right now. So I'm really proud of my team here. I know I can, when I return after vacation to work, I can pick things up where they are, not where I left them over 2 weeks ago or something. Coming to the next lesson, which is to shorten feedback loops to learn early. And in product development, we have a lot of feedback loops. Shorten them wherever you can. Only with feedback we can learn. And the earlier we learn, the earlier we can adapt. It's the whole fail fast, learn fast thing. And in my experience, it applies to the whole workflow. In the very beginning, when there's this new story idea, we can test that already before any line of code is written, just by asking questions, identifying the unknowns, the risks. It can continue when people start to implement that story, and we can help making sure everybody's on the same page and has a clear understanding. I really love to use mind maps at that phase to map out my test ideas, the questions I have, inconsistencies I might have already discovered, or things we haven't thought of, and to walk it through with my developer or a product owner, or at best both. They are really visual, they're easy to adapt and edit and move things around. And it's like a living document until, and it also serves as a document of my testing at the very end. So this is something would really help me there. I also try then to test that increment early as possible and throughout the workflow. When I started at the current team I'm working in, like 2.5 years ago, they told me, it's not ready for testing yet. The story didn't even pass code review. So there will be lots of changes anyway. You don't have to waste your time. And I thought, it changes all the time. That's no reason. I'd rather test small chunks and continuously and early and provide feedback as soon as possible instead of having that huge task at the end, which is taking a long time, and people already started to work on new things. They would have to switch contexts and so on. So I just did it, and yeah, I managed to convince them with the results. And of course, testing doesn't stop after release. You can monitor the application, check the logs, get feedback from the users as soon as possible to shorten also those feedback loops. What helped my teams was to experiment a lot. In my point of view, experimenting is the tool to learn for Agile teams. But you have to be ready for that. And not all teams or team members want to try something new. I had to find that sweet spot where they are willing to experiment. And with every step, they opened up a bit more and more. But change takes time. As I shared earlier, I also happened to be a Scrum Master during a certain period for 3 years, actually, next to testing. And I came into this team back then who thought they would be doing Scrum, they would be Agile, and, I was the only one having experience with that. I entered the team and I thought, okay, that's not really fitting to the definitions or to how I also would like to work. And I tried to share that knowledge and improve things. And I really had to learn that it took them quite a while to just follow the rules of the game before they could try to adapt them to their context and their needs. So it really took time, and I could only change one thing at a time. Now, if you're ready, then know what's the problem and which potential solutions are there to try. And if you know that, then you can do many little experiments to learn from and to show you the way. Find out what works in your context and what not, because you won't know before you try it. As an example from my very current team, which we started last year in April, is that we wanted to try a different development approach. Just try something out that we heard from conferences and blog posts and so on. And we decided to give mob programming a try. So you might have heard about this approach already. It's the whole team working on the same task, same time, same place, same computer. It was initiated by Woody Swill's team back at Hunter Industries. And lately, it's been also driven a lot by Marit Purjärvi and Llewellyn Falco with their really awesome mob programming guidebook. It's available for free on LeanPub, and I really recommend this if you'd like to give it a try yourself. For my team, as I said, we started it last year in April, and this experiment was really successful. We had to find our own format a bit, and unfortunately, we don't mob all the time. We use this as a tool in our toolbox and call out a mob on demand. It also can be on any kind of activity. It's not only about programming, it's also about testing. Or we reviewed applications from candidates for recruiting. Or we prepared a presentation for our stakeholders together, anything. Anything where we needed all the brains in to solve tricky problems or to share that knowledge we had, the implicit knowledge that where you don't know that the others don't know. And it's also a lot of fun as well. As a side effect, the following happened. Before we tried mobbing, our developers were always quite hesitating to pair up on a story. I mean, they asked for help if they got stuck, but then, they returned again to their own stories. But after seeing the benefits of mob programming, they suddenly were willing to pair up on a story from the start. And nowadays, I also pair with a lot of my developers. They even sometimes call me over to pair test and request it. And this way, we tested together, we explored together, we wrote test automation together, programming, or just writing messages to another team where maybe communication might be a bit tense. Anything that helps. Now, how to learn as a whole organization, as a company. What I learned is I have to spread the word. Especially as I'm now in a large organization, people often came up to me and asked, so what is an Agile tester? What do you do exactly all day? And I found myself talking to people a lot about all that. And also why I don't call myself a QA. I test anything, not only software. I try to provide feedback on anything so we can build quality in together. Can also be a workflow, collaboration, anything. I added Agile to my role as I'm not the traditional type of tester. I really enjoy and foster and go for close collaboration in an Agile cross-functional team. It's the environment I'm working in. And I really don't believe that quality can be assured. So if it's QA, I'd rather see it as quality advocate or quality assistance. I also really like the term question asker or questions assured. That's quite fitting from my point of view. So to spread the word, get better at elevator pitching your own job and role, how you identify, and do it face-to-face. There's many ways to do so. I started to give tech talks at my company or workshops. For example, exploratory testing for developers. That was really fun. But there are more formats. You can do brown bag lunches, open spaces, and more. And join forces in case you're not the lone tester in the company. In my current role, this is finally the case for me, because in my first companies, I was always the lone tester, and now I'm not anymore. So we have other testers around in the other product teams. So we started a testing community. It started out as a community of interest. So anybody interested in testing joined. We had a product owner, a developer, a UX specialist, an Agile coach, and so on. Nowadays, it turned a bit into a community of practice, which is a pity to lose the diversity, but still really helpful to share our everyday challenges with each other. It's a great learning opportunity. We shared our lessons. We shared things that worked for us. We could ask for advice. What we do is we meet at least once a month, and either someone of us gives a talk about a certain topic, or we sometimes do a lean coffee session so everybody can bring in their challenges and questions. And yeah, in general, we try to mix up formats. We also work on company-wide topics regarding testing. For example, when we recruit further testers, it's us who are doing the interviews. Or we worked on a career path for testers. Or sharing knowledge with the rest of the organization, help spreading the word. We also mob tested together already. We peer test to spread knowledge and approaches. And there are many more formats you could do in communities. So I'd really encourage you to join forces. A company also learns by bringing in new people. So when hiring, we value the mindset a lot, the testing mindset. We want to have critical thinkers. We want someone with an agile mindset, meaning enjoying and fostering the close collaboration, building a great product together. And we'd also like to see a learning and growth mindset, the will to continuously stretch ourselves and hone our craft. I mean, skills are important, of course, but we value mindset more. Both can be learned, but we'd rather have someone bringing in the mindset already. So last year we had lots of interviews and a lot of recruiting going on, and we had to find our way to do those interviews and how to find out those mindsets. What helped us here a lot was following Elisabeth Henriksen's advice, which she gives in her awesome book, Explore It, also a really recommended book. And at the very end of this book, she shares her approach of interviews with testers, which is to do paired exploratory testing sessions. That was really valuable for us, and I'd encourage you to check it out. So we talked a lot about personal development, learning as a team, as a company, but what about the testing community now? In the end, it's all about the people, and we have to connect with them to learn more. You can listen to their stories, of course, and share their stories. On Twitter, it's easy, just retweet or share blog posts, videos, books you come across. But those people can also be asked for support. I need feedback to learn. And what helped me a lot there was the testing community. In my experience, it's a really open community, really safe, and I could easily approach experts. I mean, if not for the people of this community and their encouragement, I would not be doing this webinar today. So you can listen, you can ask for support, but please also support the people who ask you for support and help them grow. It's about getting, but also giving back. You can connect with those people on social media, of course, that's quite easy. For example, Twitter, or follow the blogs, LinkedIn, Google+, Facebook. There are Slack teams about testing. That's pretty easy nowadays. Sometimes these communities also do virtual meetings like weekend testing sessions, or some experts also offer Skype coaching. Some of the Slack teams have monthly virtual hangout sessions or formats like that. Locally, you can go to meetups, regular tables. I would have loved if I would have gone there already when I started testing. I only attended meetups last year for the first time. It's such a pity, actually. Nowadays, I would recommend everybody to reach out there. Just check the meetup page and check for your location. Most probably, there is one or found one. And conferences, of course. It's a great way to meet people, especially if conferences offer those great formats like clean coffee, open spaces, offering breaks, so you can use the socializing time. And well, personally, I rather identify as an introvert, so this is approaching people is quite scary for me in the beginning. But what I found over the last years is that it's possible for me to overcome that fear. I could, just look for a lunch table where maybe there's only one person, just approach that table in person and say, "Hi, how are you doing?" Just that, and the conversation got started. And I got to know many great people like that. And well, now that I started also to speak at conferences, I learned that this makes it even easier for me as an introvert, because now I often get approached by people myself, and I really would like to thank those people for doing so. Now, you have a story to share too. For me, doing this takes courage. I mean, it still takes courage to just tweet my own thoughts. The very first trigger to share my stories was when I finally met Lisa Crispin for the very first time in real life. Back in 2015, I attended a tutorial and went to her afterwards to talk to her. And this is exactly what she told me. Like, why don't you give a talk yourself? You could start with a lightning talk or something, but you have a story to share too. And I thought, like, well, I don't know. I wasn't ready for that yet. It took me another year and a very inspiring keynote by Abby Fichtner. And she was quoting Eleanor Roosevelt, who was saying, "Do one thing every day that scares you." Over lunch at that conference, I ended up in a deal to submit a paper at a conference. And yeah, doing so, it pushed me out of my comfort zone, but it brought me far. So many thanks to Toya Mamuji, who offered me exactly that deal. At the same time, I was hesitating to start a blog because I always wanted to do so, but again, I feared to start it. And I also received the advice to do it for myself, for my own learning, and not to overthink it. Today, I'd like to give it back and tell you as well, your story is unique. Share it so others can learn from it. Even if you think I have nothing valuable to share, there are always others in the community who can benefit and learn from your story. You never know. I only learned what is valuable to others as soon as I started to share. Now, what helps? This is the final sprint for the talk. I'd like to share some short, quick, simple points that will help make it happen. So let's go. Stay authentic. Stay true to yourself, but also to your team and company. People feel if you're not honest with them, which will have an impact on collaboration. So if you feel you cannot be authentic, maybe it's not the right place for you. Make it safe. You might have heard about psychological safety already. Google wrote about that a lot, and also in the modern Agile approach, one of the principles is make safety a prerequisite. Now, Create a safe learning environment also for others. Provide that support and encouragement to make it safe to fail. Allow yourself to fail, but also allow others to fail. Trust should be given in advance without having to gain it. Foster that safety to help others learn. And learn how to become a unicorn. Everyone is different and can contribute in different ways. Find your own way. I mean, it's not about getting perfect. It's about getting more colors. Diversity is king. And discover the magic. Get up and do it. Be brave. Get out of your comfort zone. It helped me so much. Really do the one thing every day that scares you. Use your chances and don't overthink it. To take that leap in the dark, which will help you grow a lot. It's the reason I'm here today and doing that webinar. And if you found that magic already, then help others discover that magic too. Now here comes the final lesson I'd like to share with you today. And in my eyes, it brings all together. And also as promised, I will share a link to a webpage with you where you will find the recommended resources to learn Agile testing that help me stay up to date. So as I said, it's all about us, the people. We can drive the change we want. Therefore, I'd like to encourage you, after this webinar, take the time and find one of your peers, maybe at your company or maybe in the external testing community. Introduce yourself if they don't know you yet, and share your biggest lesson with them. Because together, we are Groot. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisi. That was a great presentation. We'll get to the Q&A at the very end. I can just remind everyone, please do leave your questions for Lisi there in the question box, and I will get around to that Q&A in just a moment. So thank you, Lisi. There is 2 ebooks available for you to download at the moment. There is one on Selenium and one on test techniques for the test analyst. Our conference program is out for The Hague this November. Please have a look at it on our website. So, Lisi, there's a couple of questions here for you, so I'll just dive straight into them. Advice for someone trying to implement change, how to reinvent the wheel in their workplace. It's easy to tread on someone's toes when you try to explore different areas of testing.
Yeah, that's true. I often got the question if I wouldn't see it as stepping out of my zone, you know, the scope of my tester role. In the end, the only thing that helped in my experience was to really talk to those people in person and really try to convince or explain first what is the problem you see and what is the solution you try to go for, or you want to try out. I mean, as I said, it's also more like an experiment. We never know if the thing we try to reach the change we want is going to work out and really result in that change.
Yeah.
I remember that Katrina Clokey wrote about a really great model how to exactly address those problems. I haven't tried it myself yet, but for her it was also about like convincing others to come with her on that the journey on change. And this is something I would really love to try. So far, for me, it helped by talking to the persons, but of course, with some persons it's easier and some others, well, it's not. So I would really recommend to try out the model that Katrina helped a lot.
Okay, perfect. So change and experimentation can sometimes cause delay in sprints and productivity. Have you any advice?
That's definitely true. So I have to say I'm currently in a really good position with my current team where this is really supported. So we value to try things and rather fail fast and early than to, you know, have a huge pile of problems in a few months. But although this is still like always encouraged and also by a product owner, at some points it might get too much, or there are more pressing issues to solve for our business. So also here we are on that constant balance of finding an appropriate portion. Here again, it's about really talking to each other and explaining what is the current priority, why do we think, for example, as a development team, that we have to try it out now, or also, not to run into the wrong direction for a long time. So this is unfortunately not like really concrete advice. It's just something I experienced in my current team, where it's really safe to approach those topics. We encountered one of those situations last year where we had a huge epic to work on, and we ran into the wrong direction for over 2 months, really.
Okay. Yeah.
And in the end, we found out, like, luckily one of us found out what would be a way easier approach, which would not cause us as much headaches. And we talked about it. We talked about it with our product owner. And we could convince everybody to say, okay, let's really throw away the over 2 months of work and go for that easy approach, because it will save our lives later on. But it's really depending on your contacts and any situation you have.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Which testing blogs do you recommend to follow?
Oh, these are actually on the website. You probably still see in my last slide here.
Yeah.
So
I'm just going to I will just have a look at those again, Lisi, so people can see them. Yeah.
Of course. Let me see. Okay, so you should see my screen again.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, so
Okay,
perfect. You have the bit.ly there.
Yes, exactly. Just follow that link and you're gonna see a list of recommended resources where I also post my favorite blogs, the favorite, or like the Twitter persons to follow, or which like I really like to follow, and more. Also key articles that really helped me in understanding agile testing.
Okay, I'll leave that link up there, and also I will put it in the landing page at the very end of this, so you can get a recording of this webinar as well. So have you ever been exhausted with getting in touch and talking to new people? This is from Simon Berner.
Yeah, that's a good question, because as I shared, I'm more on the introvert side, I would say. And yes, it's really exhausting for me also to talk to lots of new people, because I'm always under tension then. But as long as the benefit outweighs it, I'm still fine. But I had times when, especially being on conferences that take, like, I don't know, maybe a full week, I had to sometimes just retreat to my room, my hotel room, and just shut the world off, give myself a break, and refill my energies, because it is exhausting. And my advice here is also to really look after yourself there. And it's totally fine to miss out on things. And if that gives you the energy, then to benefit of those new connections you're going to build.
Yeah, definitely. What would you suggest? I'm not from a testing background, but I like problem solving and I read about testing. I really want to get into testing, but I don't know how. Please, any ideas would be appreciated. Do you run any tutorials for beginners?
Oh, that's a good one, because I just recently came about a very great article, which was posted on the Ministry of Testing Dojo.
Okay.
By Heather Reed. She shared her, like, I think 30 steps or tasks that she would recommend any new tester should know. And it's I don't have the link right here, but it's also on that recommended resources page. Brilliant. I have in that link, because from my perspective, it was not only about new testers coming in, but definitely really valuable for new testers to, learn about all the different areas that are there. But also, I think any tester should know about these resources. So this is
it's
a
a
very good
useful
starting
link.
point.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I will make sure to that everyone can get hold of all this at the very end. How do you find time to organize and constantly learn? How do you find the time to organize that?
Yeah, so that came along with the habit I created. As I allowed myself to, to only learn maybe just for 5 minutes a day, something like that, I could easily integrate it in my everyday life. And I mean, I started that habit, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And what helps me a lot is that I commute to work via public transport.
Okay.
So I really have a bit of time there when commuting, and this is like, I do it every workday, right? Back and forth, and I just use that time for learning. I mean, not always. Sometimes it's, if I'm just tired, of course I can sleep, or I don't know, listen to music, audiobooks, anything. But normally I'm really, already, it got intrinsic. So I got excited to, I can sit again on the train and check out my Twitter stream and read the new blog post. And it's also time boxed then, because if I arrive, and then, it's done for the day.
Yeah, exactly.
That helped me a lot.
Brilliant. Okay, so last question, Lucy. How do you encourage a change in mindset in the team? Do you organize group exercises, etc.?
Yeah, so I often had the case to change mindsets. Like this example where what I shared, that some people said, hey, you don't have to test yet, don't waste your time. Back then I just did it and convinced it by doing so and by constantly still talking about it, sharing in daily scrums. But now that we also learned, like in my current team, about mob programming or mob testing, mob anything, nowadays I would rather try to go for these kind of collaborative methods, because in a mob, it's really safe to share the own knowledge and share your perspective. It's a bit different than in a peer. In a peer, you have you could have an opponent, but in a whole team, it's you have all the perspectives in, and that helped a lot to change mindsets. Like, for example, how we do things. Do we also about things, how much to automate, how much not? What about our infrastructure? Stuff that we weren't clear about. Also sharing the testing perspective that everybody has to test, and so on. Another thing that helped me just to complete that picture was to really have them feel the pain. I mean, this might not be the perfect, but in case you don't have any other chance, it helped me to feel or make them feel the pain, because we had the problem that testing was a bottleneck for us, especially as I started on a second team as well. Like I was for 3 months or something working as the only tester for 2 teams suddenly, and I quickly realized it's a full-time job on both. So of course I just was like running after tickets, and it was just not working out at all, and both teams really felt the pain of that. And we had to sit together and really had to agree, okay, right, we all have to do our share and our part. And that changed the mindset of both teams a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. Lucy, thank you so much for your webinar today. It was really helpful. A lot of comments, not questions, came in just saying fantastic webinar, and thank you for sharing your knowledge, and that they're looking forward to reading your recommended resources. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
feedback. Thank you.
A recording of this webinar will be available on our Huddle site. So go over there, have a look, and we'll link to the recommended resource landing page as well. So thank you so much again, Lucy.
Thank you too. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.